Hello YouTube friends. Today's instalment in the Liberty series is going to be all about the postage stamp block, which is what these curtains are made from. Now, you've seen these curtains behind me in videos for a long time now, and many people have said, oh, tell us about the curtains. How did you make the curtains? So today's the day. We're actually going to talk about it today, why I made them and what they're made from. So I sometimes teach people how to make simple patchwork. I like to explain how you take quite simple shapes, do some clever cutting and stitching together, like with the Round the World quilt block that I showed you a few weeks ago. And then you can make something that looks really, really impressive that's actually terribly simply constructed. So a few years ago, this is my teaching book, one of them. A few years ago, I wanted to, let's get this the right way up. I wanted to teach a block called the postage stamp block. It's this block here, and you can see, can't you? It's the same thing. So it's this block, which is, how big are they? These are 1.5 inch squares when they're finished here. But they're all put together in a very scrappy way. Unlike the trip around the world block, which is very precise and very organised how you stitched all of that together to make a pattern. This one, you want it to be as random as possible. Here's another one in my book here that is all yellows and blacks here. So I made a couple of samples before I taught this class so that people could see how to construct this block for themselves. And this was as big as it was. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if they had a bigger piece to see so that you could see how this very scrappy, random arrangement of tiny squares would look in a big block. So I made a piece about that big. And I wanted to have a look at it. So I hung it up in the window here. I just pegged it up on the window pole. So that I could step back and see what it looked like. And I lived with it for a few days, hanging up there. And every time I walked past it, I thought, that looks really nice. That would be good as curtains. Well, once I'd had that thought, that was it. My fate was sealed. And so the idea of making curtains for this very long conservatory, it's a huge window here, that idea was born. And so there followed many days and weeks of cutting the block that I'm going to show you now, the postage stamp block, and piecing them all together. Now there are, I counted them all, there are a lot of squares in there. I'll show you, I'll put a picture in here of the whole run of them. I've got a picture of the whole run of them with all the curtains closed, so you can see what that looks like. So because we're doing this series about Liberty fabric, I thought I'd make a postage stamp block using Liberty fabric and then make it into something. Watch and I'll show you what I decided to make. Okay, let's get started. So I started off by cutting 2-inch strips, width of fabric and 2 inches wide. Lots and lots of different patterns of Liberty. The ones I chose this time were all reds and pinks. So here they all are, mixed them all up. And the next thing we're going to do is cut them 9 inches long. So I took all these strips, this is a bit speeded up, and I laid them on top of one another about 5 or 6 deep. We're just cutting the selve edge off there. And then what I'm going to do is they're 2 inches wide and I'm going to cut them at 9 inches. That will make sure that I've got plenty to play with seams and so on. So yeah, I went ahead and cut all of those. Now in order to make the block be really random and scrappy so that there's not very many repeats in there, you have to start with quite a lot of 2-inch strips. So I've just cut some 2-inch strips out of some of this Liberty. And I've cut probably about, I don't know, 12 different designs here. And these are 2 inches wide by about 9 inches long. That's so what we're going to do with these now is just very randomly stitch them together 2 by 2 and then 4 by 4, and that will be big enough for the project we're doing. So we'll do that now. I've got my 1/4 inch foot on my sewing machine. I've got the big pile of the 2 by 9s here, and I'm just going to stitch them together in 2s now. So let's do that. Funky music, possibly. So now that I've sewn them all together in 2s, I'm going to sew them together in 4s now, just the same. So now the 4 strips are stitched together, pressed, and now I'm going to trim them. I could trim them 2 at a time, but I like to do them 1 at a time so that I can see that I'm getting them nice and square. So the first thing I do is trim one end up like that, and then these are going to be in 2-inch strips, just the same as this strip was. These are going to be 2 inches this way. Okay, so I'll line that up there, and I'm going to use the mat and the ruler to check that my 2 inches, just keep it nice and straight here along these lines, and there we go. So what I'm going to end up with is a lot of different 2-inch strips with 4 blocks on them, and I'm going to mix them all up together. These little pieces here, these will end up in my box of Liberty scraps, and every single bit of this will get used when I make the postcards, or like the other day when I made that frustrating little Liberty box that I collaged or decoupaged or whatever the word is. Okay, 4 more. Okay, so what we have now then is all these random little strips of fabric sewn together. They are all very, very different. There's a big pile of them here, and what my job now is, I'm going to take 2 of them, making sure that they're quite different. So let's look at those 2. Okay, so I'm going to look along. I mean, of course they're Liberty, so they all look beautifully similar, but I'm going to look along here and make sure that I've got no repeats on that row there, and stitch those 2 together. Now, actually, I'll turn that one, just a minute, glasses on. Because I pressed everything going in one direction, I'll spare you the picture of the boy band for this one. I'm going to make that row go upwards and this row go downwards, and just check that they are still different. There's no matches there, very random, and then I can nest those seams together. So I'm going to nest those 2 together like that. I like nesting seams, they're just so much easier to work with, no bulk around the seam. This lavender smells so lovely. I'm doing it over the bag in case any drops in, but it isn't. It's all going in there, all 30 grams. So there then, I'll sew along the top of here now. And this is my postage stamp block, but made into something completely different. I'm going to put these for sale in the shop. So I've had a lovely afternoon sewing these together. They smell completely divine. They really do. The idea was to show you how I made the postage stamp block for the curtains, but in doing so I've made these little lavender bags for the shop. That's the postage stamp block, just like my curtains. Oh, they smell so nice. Absolutely lovely. And I've got this much lavender left, so I might make a few more. Not many, just a few. Thanks for watching. I'll catch up with you next time.